I had just moved into a small apartment after my divorce. The place was cheap, a little run down, but it felt like freedom. My friends joked about the cracked bathroom mirror. Bad luck, they said. I laughed it off. The first week was uneventful. Work, sleep, repeat. But on Thursday night, while brushing my teeth, I noticed something strange. In the mirror, my reflection wasn't perfectly in sync. My hand lifted a fraction of a second too late. I blinked it away as exhaustion. Friday night, it happened again. This time, I leaned closer. My reflection's eyes seemed darker, almost bruised. I touched my face normal. The mirror me didn't touch his. He just stared, lips twitching like he was about to smile. By Saturday, I couldn't ignore it. Every time I looked in that mirror, something was off. Sometimes his head tilted the wrong way. Sometimes he mouthed words I didn't say. Once, when I yawned, he didn't move at all, he just glared. I called the landlord. The mirror's warped or something, I explained. He chuckled. That mirror's been there since the 70s. Tenants complain sometimes, but it's just old glass. You want it replaced, pay for it yourself. That night, I covered it with a towel. I thought that would solve everything. But at 3:12 a.m., I woke to the sound of tapping. Not from the front door, from the bathroom. 3 light taps, like fingernails, against glass. I stayed frozen in bed, staring at the dark crack under the bathroom door. Then, slowly, the towel I had hung slipped down. I don't know how it was clipped tight, but I saw it, a pale glow leaking out from the mirror, like a television on static. I built up courage, grabbed the baseball bat I kept under the bed, and inched toward the bathroom. My heart was hammering so loud, I thought it might wake the neighbors. When I flicked the light switch, the glow vanished. The towel lay crumpled on the floor. The mirror showed only me sweaty, shaking, clutching the bat. For a moment, I almost laughed. And then, the reflection smiled. My lips stayed pressed tight, but his teeth were bared in a grin so wide it stretched unnaturally across his face. I stumbled back. My phone slipped from my hand and clattered on the tile. The sound echoed too loud, like the room was hollow. I ran, didn't care about the lights, didn't care if I locked the door. I ran straight out into the freezing night in nothing but a t-shirt. The police checked the apartment. Nothing there, they said. No broken glass, no footprints, just me, apparently hallucinating. But here's the thing. When they emailed me the incident report, I saw the attached body cam photo they'd taken of the bathroom. They hadn't noticed it, but I did. In the mirror behind them, there was someone else, standing in the reflection of my bedroom doorway. Someone who wasn't me. When I first moved into the old office building downtown, I thought I'd lucked out. It wasn't glamorous flickering fluorescent lights, thin carpets, the faint smell of mildew in the stairwell, but the rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask many questions. Perfect for a freelance writer trying to rebuild after a messy year. I worked late most nights. The silence of the empty building helped me focus. But after a week, I started hearing things through the vents. At first, it was just static, like air struggling through rusted ducts, then whispers. At midnight, on a Tuesday, I froze at my desk. Clear as day, a man's voice drifted down the vent. "Don't stay here." I laughed nervously, told myself it was someone upstairs. Maybe a tenant practicing lines for a play. Maybe a radio left on. But the floor above mine was vacant. I'd checked the directory. The next night, the voice returned, softer, angrier. "You shouldn't be here." This time, it was joined by faint footsteps in the hall, though the motion lights never flicked on. I grabbed my phone and recorded the sound. When I played it back, all I heard was static, but I swear I'd felt the words vibrate in my chest. By Friday, I was exhausted. I nearly convinced myself I was imagining everything. Then, while typing, I felt a breath on the back of my neck. Cold, moist, like someone leaning in far too close. I spun around. No one. Only the vent in the corner, its grate rattling. That weekend, I asked the landlord about the building's history. He chuckled. "You writers, always looking for a ghost story." When I pressed, he sighed. "Fine. 10 years ago, a guy rented the whole floor above you. He ran some shady call center. One night he locked the doors and never came out. They found him in the ductwork, wedged tight, like he'd crawled in to hide. Said he must have suffocated. Whole place was shut down for a while, but don't worry, you're safe." Safe, right? The following Monday, I stayed late again. At 2 a.m., the power flickered. My laptop dimmed. From the vent, the same voice rasped, "Get out." And then clearer, harsher, another voice joined in, overlapping, "Get out." The grate shook violently, screws rattling loose. I stumbled back, heart racing, as cold air blasted into the room. Papers swirled off my desk. My mug shattered on the floor. When it finally stopped, I forced myself to creep forward. The grate hung by a single screw. Beyond it, pitch black, and deep inside, to faint pinpricks of light. Eyes, reflecting like an animal's. I slammed the grate shut and ran. Didn't even bother packing my laptop. The next day, when I returned in daylight, the vent was sealed. Not just screwed back, sealed with a solid steel plate welded to the wall. I asked the landlord about it. He frowned. That vent's been sealed for years. Nobody should have touched it. He let me back into my office. Everything was neat, tidy, as if nothing had happened. My laptop sat closed on the desk, but when I opened it, a single document was on the screen. Unsaved, untitled. It contained just 4 words, typed over and over in perfect rhythm. "You don't belong here." At 1:07 a.m., the phone in the glass booth by the stairwell rang once. Not my Seltha dusty beige desk phone no one had used in years. When I lifted the receiver, I heard the quiet of an empty building. Then a woman's voice, low and steady, like she was reading from a card. "Do not take the elevator." I was on the overnight watch at the Whitman Exchange, a century-old pile of brick and echo, closed for renovation. They gave me a ring of heavy keys, a 2-way radio that hissed more than it talked, and a log to initial every hour. The lobby smelled like plaster and old paper. The elevator cables sighed somewhere in the shaft, like a tired animal. I hung up and stared at the closed elevator doors. I took the stairs. 2nd floor, plastic sheeting, wet concrete, my footsteps coming back to me a half-second late. 3rd, gutted ceilings, cold air sliding down unseen vents and touching the back of my neck. In a leaning directory, behind dusty glass, I caught my reflection and flinched. For a heartbeat, my reflected mouth kept moving after mine had stopped, forming a word I could not hear. Fatigue, I told myself. Keep walking. At 2:03, the booth phone rang again, one dry burr. I let it die. It rang once more. I picked up. "Do not take the elevator," the same woman said. Same calm cadence. "Who are you?" I asked. "Are you in the building?" Paper rubbed softly near the mouthpiece, like she turned a page. The line went dead. On 5, I found footprints on the concrete. Not boot tread, not dust smudges. Bare feet, narrow, arched, damp enough to darken the gray. They crossed from the stairwell to a wall of plastic and stopped like they had walked into rain. I wrote the time in my log with an unsteady hand and climbed to 6. The old courtroom sat under a tarp, benches like sleeping animals. On a long table lay my clipboard where I had set it down. Under my line to 19 courtroom. Clear, another neat hand had written a second note in wet ink. "Do not ride the car." My radio hissed. When I pressed transmit and said my name, the static leaned closer, then pulled away. 7 was colder. The mailroom clock ticked without hands. In a door window fogged with frost, I saw myself dim and oval. Behind my shoulder, a second shape stood just out of frame, taller than me, head slightly tilted. I kept my eyes on the glass and lifted my hand. The thing behind me did not lift anything. The frost feathered at the edges like breath had touched it. "Do not take the elevator," the woman's voice said. "Either in the room or in my head, which are the same place at 3 in the morning." I headed back toward the stairs. The elevator bell dinged. The doors on 7 slid open with a smoothness this tired building did not deserve. Inside, a pool of clean light on scuffed metal. The indicator above the door showed no number. Air came out that smelled like cold rain and old paper. No one stood in the car. Still, I felt the small weight shift of a person changing feet. The bell chimed again, polite. I stepped backward and took the stairs down too fast, counting landings and losing count, breathing in plaster and old varnish. On a mid-level, the booth phone rang far below, one burr-like punctuation. The elevator bell answered above me on 8, then 7, then 6, as if something had pressed a sequence and was content to wait. My radio clicked, and a voice close to my ear said my name, and then the sentence I already knew. "Do not take the elevator." It was my own voice, thinner and flatter, like hearing yourself recorded. In the lobby, the glass of the phone booth was fogged from the inside. A fingernail drew a single letter in the condensation and then wiped it away. I backed against the security desk and wrote 247 lobby, clear with a hand that trembled. The elevator cables sighed, then were quiet. The front door opened and a tall woman in a dark coat stepped in with snow in her hair and a cardboard box in her arms. She had a ring of keys heavier than mine. "You are not supposed to be here," she said, without heat. "They were meant to relocate you after 2. I did not get a message." She looked at the elevator and then at me. "You did." She set the box on the desk, took one of my keys without asking, and opened the phone cabinet. She unplugged a brittle cord that looked like an artery. The dial tone sighed and died. "We rip this out every week," she said. "It grows back." She slid a folded paper toward me. A copy of my log, my handwriting, my times. Next to 219 courtroom, a faint pencil line in a different hand read, "He is already riding." "I did not ride," I said. "Good," she said. "Keep not riding. If the bell rings, do not answer. If the car opens, walk away. If you hear your own voice on the radio, trust it more than the one in your head." Snow gusted in around her as she left. The door shut. The building exhaled. By 3:15, the stillness felt like a trick stretched too tight. I made one more round. The bare prints on 5 had dried 2 pale outlines. The courtroom slept under plastic. On 7, the mailroom clock ticked in a room without anyone to tell the time. On my way down, the elevator bell sounded behind me. On 6, I did not look. It sounded again on 5, cheerful and patient. On for the doors breathed open and closed, like a mouth practicing a word. The radio on my belt clicked, and my voice whispered, "Almost there." I reached the lobby and wrote the last line I would ever write in that book. 3:43 relief arrived. In the black glass of the front doors, the elevator opened behind me like a white slit, and something leaned as if listening, then turned its head toward me. At that distance, a person could call it coincidence, the way a shadow throws a familiar shape. I picked up my keys and walked out into falling snow. The bell chimed once more, as polite as a dinner invitation I would never accept. In my pocket, the radio breathed and went still. My manager called after sunrise to ask why I had not logged a ride to 7 at 2:30. "Because I did not ride," I said. He paused and told me not to return until the renovation finished. I folded the copy of the log and slid it into a drawer at home. It is still there. Under my last line, 3:43 relief arrived a second hand. I do not recognize had already written the next Shift S first entry in a small, calm script. 1241 lobby. Arcade offices, clear. Do not take the elevator. If this story's chilled you to the bone, don't forget, hit the like button to show your support. Drop a comment with your own creepy experiences, and subscribe so you never miss another terrifying true story. Remember, the next nightmare could be closer than you think.